for a country who not only is running wicked fiscal deficits every year and a debt that is compounding exponentially, where the interest on the debt is more than your defense spending, which has to be borrowed. I would just simply say we are seeing a transition where gold and silver are being reintegrated into the monetary system as a symbol of trust. And this will become a marriage between blockchain transparency and physical commodities. And it's happening. It's real.
Let's talk a little bit more about these big smart money players that are standing for delivery. Maybe we can just spell it out. Who is doing this?
Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
If I had to guess, it's the Exchange Stabilization Fund, in other words, the U.S. Treasury, who can do so in a clandestine manner without asking for congressional approval. It's about national security. How do they frame critical minerals? National security. So they bring it all in, they buy it all up, and they don't have to talk about it. And the bigger question is, why don't we hear about it? Forget about who it is. How about why? Where's the mainstream? Where's the Jim Cramers, these people who pretend to be looking out for our best interests? And he said gold and silver, the top was in months ago. And what do you know? We are way higher. And I've never sold gold and silver for people to become wealthy. I sell it because it is wealth that has outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, everything. And the system about the dollar, since 1971, it's been about trust. We severed the gold standard. We're no longer redeemable in gold the way we were prior to that. And who trusts the United States anymore, whether it be institutions? And I'm a patriot. I thank God every day I was born in the United States. And I would vote for President Trump again. I thank God he's there. But who trusts us? Our institutions, the judicial system, the federal government, immigration, you name it. Who trusts these things? Who trusts our fiscal responsibility? We are creating $1 trillion in debt every 100 days. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. So we pretend to be the policeman of the world, right? And military spending, which they've now increased to 1.5 trillion, is discretional. And the Congressional Budget Office said by 2031, 100% of tax revenue will go just to pay the mandatory entitlements and the interest on the debt. And those entitlements are off balance sheet, which means when you fund your military, you're doing so by selling bonds. You're borrowing money from the world to go around and police them. We are at the late stages of a system, an empire based on trust, which has squandered the trust not only through weaponizing the dollar and the treasury against countries like Russia, not only through the previous administration, when you look and say, this is too stupid to be stupid, where everything that Americans were proud of, like coming to the country, all of us came from another country, our heirs did, where is there a two-tiered justice system? Are the elections fair or not? All of these things, whether or not you think they are, half the world thinks that they're not. And all of these things have eroded the trust in this nation. And so now it's going from lack of trust. Look, I'll say it this way. After World War II, the United States stood on a very high moral high ground. And I would argue we've trampled on it, not only through fiscal irresponsibility, but through our actions at home and abroad. And that is not sustainable for a country who not only is running wicked fiscal deficits every year and a debt that is compounding exponentially, where the interest on the debt is more than your defense spending, which has to be borrowed. I would just simply say we are seeing a transition where gold and silver are being reintegrated into the monetary system as a symbol of trust. And this will become a marriage between blockchain transparency and physical commodities. And it's happening. It's real. Problem is most people don't get it because the mainstream media doesn't talk about it. You do and have for years. And be honest with me, Charlotte, I'm going to ask you a question. You know, your friends who you've known forever, who know what you do, when you tell them this stuff, do they give you a blank stare? Do they say to you, what? Gold, silver, mining shares? Can you have a conversation with your oldest friends for more than 3 minutes about this stuff? You don't have to answer. Your smile says it all. And I know because I've owned a company for 36 years. They don't get it. Now they're beginning to, and they're your friends, so they listen to you, that you're smart, but the same thing is true, is that this hasn't come full circle yet where people want to acknowledge just what gold and silver represent. They've been pet rocks for a long time, but they're not anymore. And the really smart money, who is spending billions upon billions upon billions upon billions every single month, quietly, It's never happened before. And that, to me, is all you need to know.
So we're definitely, I would say, still waiting for that mainstream wake up to gold and silver. And I wonder, at what point does it become difficult for the average person to get them, given that there's all this buying from these large entities?
I love that you say that, because I've been coming to this conference before well, I take that back. I've been coming to Vancouver for conferences for a very long time. And before I came to this one, I would come to the Agora conference, which became the Rule Symposium, which now has moved to Boca. But the Agora conference back here was a decade plus ago, and I would get up on stage, and I've always been way early. People probably think I'm full of crap for saying it, and that is that this market will be defined in two ways, and I'm proving to be right, I believe. One, it will be too expensive for most people. They'll say, geez, it's so expensive, I missed it. But for people watching this show, it will be more about the difficulty obtaining product reasonably and with any expediency whatsoever, because there's very little product out there in relation to the total amount of money out there. And we are the pimple on the elephant's rear end. The elephant has no idea, but we've been talking about it forever, so we think there's plenty of it out there, right? As Rick Rule, who was in here, I saw 2 interviews before me, he will tell you 0.5% allocation from precious metals and precious metals equities across the entire financial matrix from Joe and Jane Sixpack, as he always says, to the Harvard Endowment Fund. Well, guess what? The Harvard Endowment Fund just bought a couple $100 million in gold. When the public wakes up, it will be either too expensive or too hard to get the product. And I think that is how the market will be identified on a large scale. So it is a fair question. There's not enough to go around. And if that moved just to 5%, if Rick is right, that's a 10-fold increase in demand, Charlotte. How about 10%? And you know what's interesting? Wall Street never acquiesced to metals. And you get an advisor say, fine, 5%, put 5% in. Well, the chief investment officer of Morgan Stanley just came out and said, Wall Street has used a 60-40 rule for the last 50 years. 60% stock, 40% bonds, retire wealthy. Okay, well, he said, listen, half of that portfolio is broken. Sell half your bonds and put it into metals. He's saying 60-20-20. Michael Hartnett, the chief analyst for Bank of America, who has a very, very expensive newsletter that goes to the institutionals, he says, no, 25%. Jeffrey Gundlach, the bond king, who's made his life selling bonds, said, no, 25% is not overweight. So if 5% would be a 10-fold increase, how about listening to the chief investment officer of one of the biggest banks in the world, Morgan Stanley, who says 20, or Michael Hartnett 25, or Jeffrey Gundlach says that's undervalued, or not overvalued, not overweighted. There'll be nothing left overnight. And I say that I don't care if people think I'm talking my book. At this stage, after 36 years, I don't need to talk my book. And all the interviews I do in my own YouTube channel, I'm not going to destroy my name, that of my family, and my company's name by saying anything that I don't believe in my soul. And I will tell you, there isn't enough to go around. There's far more money than there is money substitutes like gold and silver to put it into.
Yeah, I think that's a great...
As God is my witness.